So there's been a lot going on in Israel recently. Benjamin Netanyahu was trying to do judicial reforms, which would basically take power away from the Supreme Court and give himself more power, give the parliament more power. And the reason why, in the context of Israeli society, that's probably a terrible idea is because the Supreme Court is like the least bad of all of their institutions. Now, that's not saying they're good, by the way, but they're the least bad of all of their institutions. So they provide some sort of a check or balance on what is basically a brazen settler colonial project, right? Every now and then in land disputes, they'll side with Palestinians. And so Benjamin Netanyahu's like, well, let's just take power away from them, and then we don't have to worry about them anymore blocking whatever our plans are. Okay, so he came up with this judicial reform plan, but the country erupted in protests. So they went on. They were very sustained. They went on for a long time. And what we just learned now is that he suspended the judicial overhaul after the mass protests across Israel. So here's what they say in Axios. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday said he was delaying his coalition's judicial overhaul legislation after mass protests and a general strike that affected much of the country. So, by the way, we saw a general strike here in Israel. They were doing a general strike in France as well over Macron trying to raise the retirement age. Seems like every other country can, at some point or another, cobble together a general strike. In the U.S., we have never even considered it, never gotten close to it. And it's, if anything, this should give you some hope, though, that it's possible, because if you piss off the population too much, at least in France and at least in Israel, they rise up. So anyway, they continue here. Israel, including its economy, has faced instability and unprecedented political and social unrest since the plan to weaken the country's Supreme Court was announced in January. Quote, I am taking a timeout in the legislation of the judicial reform, Netanyahu said late Monday local time. In order to prevent a rift in our people, I have decided to suspend the vote on the second and third reading of the legislation in the current Knesset session in order to try and reach an understanding on the legislation during the next Knesset session, he added. Netanyahu said he wants to avoid a civil war and warned that Israeli society is on a dangerous collision course. By the way, that's quite an admission there. He's basically like, if I don't do this, we might have a civil war, which is wild. He also said he is ready to start an immediate dialogue with the opposition in order to reach a broad consensus around the judicial overhaul plan. We will bring a reform that will restore the balance between the different branches of government while strengthening civil liberties, Netanyahu said. Opposition leader Yair Lapid said he is ready to start a dialogue under the auspices of President Isaac Herzog. Lapid said his goal is to reach an agreement for a constitution for Israel. I don't know if it's Lapid or Lapid, either way. Lapid said that if Netanyahu tries any tricks, he will find the people who protested in recent weeks standing against him again. But if Netanyahu is genuine, Lapid said, there will be a serious dialogue. Benny Gantz, former defense minister and the leader of the opposition Blue and White Party, welcomed Netanyahu's announcement. Better late than never, Gantz said. Dialogue is the right path. I am ready to arrive at the negotiation at the president's residence with an open heart in order to reach an understanding, and I call on Netanyahu to do the same, Gantz said. Meanwhile, Herzog said in a statement that suspending the legislation was the right thing to do. It is time to start a candid and serious dialogue that will calm down tensions. We need to start talking now at the president's residence in order to reach a broad consensus, he said. Netanyahu shocked Israel on Sunday when he fired Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, who a day earlier called for the legislation's suspension, saying the plan created an internal rift that poses a clear and immediate threat for Israel's national security. So, by the way, that led to a bunch more protests when Netanyahu fired his defense minister. After Gallant was fired, spontaneous demonstrations erupted across the country. More than 100,000 Israeli protesters blocked Tel Aviv's main highway for hours Sunday night, and thousands more demonstrated in front of Netanyahu's residence in Jerusalem and in other cities across the country. Protests continued into Monday with about 100,000 people rallying against the government outside the Knesset. In a rare move, the head of Israel's workers' union announced on Monday morning a general strike across the country until the legislation was suspended. Such a strike hadn't taken place in decades. As a result of the strike, Israel's international airport and kindergartens were shut down and hospitals started dealing only with emergency cases. Jesus. After Netanyahu's address later Monday, the unions called off the strike. Netanyahu held intense discussions with members of his coalition government, aides, and family members on Sunday night, Likud officials said. Those meetings continued into Monday. In a dramatic turn Monday afternoon, Justice Minister Yariv Levin, who had threatened to resign, issued a statement stressing that he would respect any decision Netanyahu makes regarding the judicial overhaul. He also worried he would work to stabilize the coalition in order to prevent the government from collapsing. Levin's announcement gave Netanyahu important backing for suspending the legislation. Netanyahu also made a deal with far-right minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, who also had threatened to resign if the plan was suspended. As part of the deal, Ben-Gvir agreed to give the government until the end of the next Knesset session at the end of July to pass judicial reform based on broad consensus, the Jewish Power Party said in a statement. So here's the part of the story which is a little bit yikesy, as you're about to learn right now. Okay, so this guy, Itamar Ben-Gvir, he was staunchly on the side of you better take power away from the Supreme Court. And his party, this isn't a joke, is called the Jewish Power Party. Jewish Power Party. So this is like the far, far right of Israel. And it's almost like they're brazenly in favor of ethnic cleansing and having an ethno-state and Jewish supremacy. And so get this. In order to earn the support of this guy, Netanyahu basically agreed to give him his own militia. Ben-Gvir agrees to Netanyahu's judicial overhaul delay in exchange for Israeli National Guard. Israeli Human Rights Organization warns the National Guard proposal would result in a private armed militia that would be directly under Ben-Gvir's control. So the guy who's the head of the Jewish Power Party now has his own militia at his beck and call. Well, that sounds terrible. That sounds like Lord only knows what he's going to use this private militia for. But I'm sure it ain't going to be pretty. So anyway, a lot of people are, basically saying this is a massive victory, that Netanyahu put this thing on pause. But understand something, guys. I believe him when he says it's on pause. I don't think it's gone away for good. I think this is going to be resurrected. And what do they say? At like the end of April or something, they're going to bring it back up. So basically trying to like calm down the protests and the reaction. And then as soon as everything calms down, they're going to go right back to doing what they were trying to do. Maybe try to find a way to finesse their anti-democratic action some more. But I think they're going to still basically try to do the same thing. So it's a temporary victory brought about by massive amounts of public pressure, but it's not a complete victory, nowhere near, because they're going to revisit it. And again, in the meantime, the head of the Jewish Power Party now has his own private militia. So not going to celebrate just yet. I mean, I'm happy that this thing has been at the very least delayed, but it needs to be killed because I can't imagine how much worse things will get if there are no checks and balances left in Israel. And, just imagine putting the Palestinian ethnic cleansing on steroids and human growth hormone. Just put it on overdrive. And that's probably what we'll be looking at in an Israel with no Supreme Court to check the excesses of the government, of the Knesset, of Netanyahu. And so it ain't pretty, man. It ain't pretty. I mean, it's a temporary win here, but it's a bittersweet one because it's going to come back. And my guess is it's going to get worse. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal, Kyle, and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take 0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.